Welcome to the Musar Torah podcast for Parshas Ekev. Join us as we explore the weekly Parsha, uncovering valuable insights, and striving to become the best versions of ourselves through Musar teachings. Parshas Ekev opens with one of the most quoted lines in the entire Torah. Va'ata Yisrael ma Hashem Elokecha shoal imach ki im liyira es Hashem Elokecha leleches b'chol derachav ula'ahava oso ula'avod es Hashem Elokecha b'chol avavcha v'chol nafshecha. And now, Israel, what does Hashem your God demand of you? Only this, to revere Hashem your God, to walk only in divine paths, to love and to serve Hashem your God with all your heart and soul. On the surface, this pasuk sounds almost modest. Moshe seems to be saying, relax, it isn't complicated. Hashem only asks for a few things: fear, love, service. Anyone who has tried to actually live with constant yiras shamayim or to love Hashem with every fiber of their being knows that this only is anything but small. Tucked inside that single word, ki im, is an entire lifetime of spiritual work. There is a story from a very different part of Tanakh that helps us understand just how deep this demand goes, and it shows us the people standing at the seam of history, on the edge of greatness, can still discover that their faith has limits they never expected. The Gemara in Sota on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph describes a tense scene at the edge of the Yam Suf. The sea has not yet split. Paro's army is closing in. The tribes of Israel are standing at the water's edge, each one waiting for someone else to go first. No tribe wants the honor or the risk of being the one to step into the water before it splits. Finally, one person breaks the standstill, Nachshon ben Aminadav, the prince of the tribe of Yehuda. He jumps into the sea first, with his entire tribe following behind him. Only after Nachshon commits himself to the water does the sea actually part. The Medrash in Midbar Rabbah tells us exactly what happens next. When the Mishkan was finally built and the 12 tribes brought their inaugural offerings, it was the tribe of Yehuda, through its prince, Nachshon ben Aminadav, who brought the very first sacrifice. The Medrash explains that this was a direct reward. Nachshon had sanctified Hashem's name by descending first, so Nachshon's tribe earned the privilege of going first again at the dedication of the Mishkan. Rav Chaim Shmuel Levet Zeichel Levracha asks a question that should bother us. Why did the tribes hesitate at all? This is not a small irony. It is a genuinely strange historical fact. Throughout Jewish history, countless Jews have given their lives rather than transgress a single mitzvah. Kiddush Hashem through self-sacrifice became almost shockingly a familiar pattern among our people. Here, we have the generation that personally witnessed the 10 plagues that would soon stand at Har Sinai and receive the Torah directly from Hashem. And this generation could not bring itself to jump into the sea? If later, less spiritually accomplished generations could embrace death for Hashem's name without hesitation, how could the generation of Yetzias Mitzrayim, on the very threshold of receiving the Torah, be of a lesser stature? Something does not add up. Rav Chaim's answer reframes the entire story. Had the tribes been commanded to sacrifice their lives outright, he explains, they would have done so without a moment's pause. That kind of Mesiras Nefesh was already woven into the national character inherited from Avraham and Yitzchak generations earlier. Giving up one's life for Hashem's name had become part of who this nation was. However, that is not what they were asked to do. They were told to walk into a raging sea and to come out the other side alive, as though the sea were dry land. That demanded a completely different kind of faith. Not the willingness to die, but the conviction that the natural world itself bends instantly to Hashem's word. Believing that water could become solid ground beneath their feet required seeing through the entire fabric of nature to the reality underneath it, that the sea is not a fixed, independent force at all. It is simply Hashem's will expressed for a moment as water, capable of being expressed the next moment as dry land. Only Nachshon had reached that level of emunah. For him, the word of Hashem was reality itself, and a wall of raging water was no more an obstacle than a paved road. That is precisely why Nachshon, and Nachshon alone, became the one who sanctified Hashem's name that day, and why his reward was be the first Nasi to give a dedication to the Mishkan. There is a story told about Rav Baruch Bar Leibowitz Zeichel Levracha, which captures the same idea on a human scale. His trust in his Rebbe, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, was so complete that people would say that if Rav Chaim told him a table was a cow, he would begin to milk it. The line is repeated half as a joke, but it points to something real. Total trust in a source can outweigh what your own eyes report. Nachshon's eyes still saw water, but the one promising it would part was more reliable than his own senses. So he stepped in as though it were already dry land. This brings us back to where we started with Moshe's question. What does Hashem actually want from us? Fear, love, and service sound straightforward, but Nachshon's story shows us that a real avodas Hashem sometimes demands more than dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime mesiras nefesh. It demands a quieter, more constant kind of faith, the recognition that the obstacles we treat as immovable, as simply the way things are themselves nothing more than Hashem's will, capable of shifting the moment Hashem decides they should. This week, let's all try to identify one area of our lives where we have quietly decided something is fixed and unchangeable. A difficult relationship, a financial pressure, a health concern, a pattern we assume we are simply stuck with. Let's ask ourselves honestly whether we are treating that obstacle the way the other tribes treated the sea, as an immovable wall, rather than as something entirely within Hashem's hands to part. We don't need to feel ready to die for Hashem to grow in this kind of faith. We only need to take one step forward the way Nachshon did, trusting that the ground beneath us is more solid than it looks. The Shvatim standing at the Yam Suf were not lacking in courage. They had courage in abundance, the kind that history would later prove again and again. What they lacked, for just a moment, was Nachshon's particular clarity, the recognition that nature itself answers to Hashem's word. May we all merit to walk toward our own seas with that same clarity, trusting that what looks immovable to us is never immovable to Hashem. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Masorah Torah podcast. May we all merit to internalize Nachshon's faith in our own lives. Have a good Shabbos.